Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 16-week Adoption Parenting Coaching and Certification course, Session 5. I am your host, Brian Post, also your instructor. Oh, I like I am your host with the most, Brian Post. And I've got a lot of information to share with you this morning. In fact, I've got so much information I had to cut it off at some point. I'm not sure that we're going to even get through all the way to the point that I cut it off, because this is a very important class, and I want to make sure we're covering it in as much depth as we need to. So this week, what we're going to be covering is, let me get my stress, early development, and the impact of trauma on the adopted child. So now we're moving. We've kind of created the foundation. We've talked about the multi-layers of adoption. We've talked about the grief in adoption. We've talked about the parents' experiences in adoption, the adoptive parent experience in adoption. We've talked about how stress plays out in relationship to attachment. And now we're moving into understanding stress and the impact of trauma and early development, because that is a very important dynamic when it goes into understanding the adopted child and parenting them effectively. So I'm looking forward to sharing this class with you. So we want to start off first by talking a little bit about what is trauma. Trauma is any stressful event. It's very important that you embrace that, because I believe that our understanding of trauma is quite limited. We typically associate trauma with a few very specific kind of painful, traumatic event, stressful events, but in reality it can be any stressful event which is prolonged, overwhelming, or unpredictable. When there's a stressful event which is prolonged, overwhelming, or unpredictable, that is essentially a traumatic event. And when such events continue on, unexpressed, unprocessed, and misunderstood, then they become long-term traumatic events rather than short-term stressful events. So let's talk about that for a moment. When and if you'll pay attention just to yourself, when you experience a highly stressful event, whether it's prolonged, overwhelming, or unpredictable, typically one of the first things you'll do is you will go to your support system after you have thought about this event. You will go to your support system. Usually you'll pick up a phone, or you'll go to a friend's house. These days you may send a text, whatever the means of communication is, but you will talk about that event. It could be, oh my gosh, you should see what I just saw on the highway. You should have what I saw last night was horrible. And you'll start talking about it, or what happened to me today at work, or what I experienced a coworker happening, or what happened at home last night. We talk about these things. And when we're talking about these things, that is expressing. And as we're talking about them, and our spouse or our friend or our coworker is in communication with us, that is our processing. And so as we're expressing and as we're processing, we are creating a coherent memory in our brain system. So we are actually making sense of the experience through the expressing and the processing. That is what allows that event to be a short-term stressful event as opposed to a long-term traumatic event. So what is actually occurring at a neurocellular level is through the expression and the processing, you're actually generating an energy that is releasing the stress of the event throughout your body. It's releasing it. And as you continue to express and process it, about it and through it, what you're doing is you're allowing the energy to dissipate and to settle. And as you do that, and as you begin to make sense of it, then you are making associations, both positive and negative, associations with that event, positive associations such as, oh, that didn't happen to me. It didn't happen to a family member. I'm glad we're all safe. If it did happen to someone, I say a prayer to that family. I hope God takes care of that family. If it happened to someone in our family, we're going to get through this. We're going to make it through. This is a bump in the road, an obstacle that we're facing. We're in the valley. We're going to be able to get through this. Just going to make sure here. Sometimes this little icon pops up that says I might be experiencing. Okay, so I'm still good. It says I may be experiencing some audio difficulties or something like that. If I get disconnected from you all, I will typically call back just as soon as I can, because I can pick up a number to be able to call. And you can also say, if there's silence for any duration of time, if you'll just say, you can type in the question box, Brian, I lost you, can't hear you, then that'll give me a signal too. That way, that'll kind of keep us from, keep me from going on too long without knowing that we've lost connection. But I think we should be good. That thing popped up the last time, but I think we're going to be good. So the significance here is, as you are able to express and process, you create this energy, this vibration, this release, if you will, which then allows you to make sense of the event. Now, the making sense of the event is not only making the positive and the negative associations, it's not only settling the energy through your body and through your brain, but what it's doing, it is storing a memory in a coherent way in your memory system. Therefore, and we're going to get into this in a little bit more, but it's coherent as opposed to fragmented, and that becomes very important. But I want to back up just a minute. Where's my little, there it is. I'm going to back up just a minute and kind of just go through this again. Trauma is any stressful event. Any stressful event. And this is important for you as parents to understand as much as it is for you to understand about your children. It's important for you to understand for yourself. I recently worked with a family, and both the parents said they didn't have any, they came from a Midwestern family, grew up on farms, small towns, et cetera, et cetera. And both parents, as is common, said they didn't have any kind of traumatic events growing up in their life. But as we got into the work, what I came to start to experience was that the mother, who was the middle child, her sibling, her younger brother, came, I think he was about a year after her, maybe 2 years after her, and somewhere in that dynamic, she came to believe that she was responsible for making everything okay, number one, and number two, that her need, the expression of her needs was either not important or not a priority. And so the way this shows up today, number one, is there's some unconscious jealousy that plays out between the mother and the father when it comes to the daughter. So the mother has some jealousy when it comes to the daughter and the father. At dinner, when we was sat down, a couple of times, and this is when it kind of hit my radar. I can miss something the first time, but when it shows up a couple of times, then it starts to stand out. And I typically always make a point of kind of bringing it to the forefront, because usually it's an unconscious pattern that's being created. So when I hear it enough, I'll usually point it out, and that usually by the second time when that energy shows up, it's something that needs to be discussed. And so what happened is that the daughter asked the dad to sit beside her. And mom came through and saw that dad was sitting beside her, and she said, "Oh, I really wanted to sit beside you. Oh man, dad got my place." Now, most people wouldn't think that was significant. But here's the thing. This is a mother who's exhausted from parenting this child. She's left her job for the most part as a CPA. She only works 1 day a week, and now she stays home with the child who has a number of issues, medical issues, emotional issues, behavioral issues. So I know mom's exhausted. So the reality, kind of the authentic position is, I know mom doesn't want to sit beside the daughter. I know she's glad to have dad sit beside the daughter. I know she's glad to have dad, get up and get the daughter more food or get her something else to drink. She's happy to do that. I mean, she's ecstatic. I can feel it. But she's sending an incongruent message by saying, oh man, I really want to sit there. And it is a message that is based in a level of threat, a level of insecurity. So the next time it showed up, it was in the evening. We were playing Uno, we were playing a little card game, and mom came in. The dad and the daughter had already decided on a game, and mom came in, and she was like, oh man, I didn't know you like to play that game. You usually like to play this game. We usually like, and mom commenced to going to looking for another game that the dad and daughter had already decided on a game. To the layperson, that is just not a big deal. But to me, that is a huge unconscious message that is setting up a dynamic with this family that is very important for them to make sense of. And I didn't quite grasp it. I had to sleep on it. Actually, I slept on it. I was leaving the next morning very early, and I woke up and it was very clear what was going on. And so I talked to dad. Dad drove me to the airport. I talked to him about it. And then I called mom later and I talked to her about it. And she's like, you know what? That really does make a lot of sense. And I said to her, you didn't really want to sit beside her at dinner. I mean, you really were happy to have dad sit beside her. And she said, you're so right. Because I sometimes I'm just tired. I'm just done. And I said, you have to honor that. To see the significance of that is that she does not feel completely secure in dad having a relationship with the daughter, and that's reflected in her own early history. The other thing is she doesn't feel completely secure in communicating her needs to dad when it comes to her parenting relationship with the daughter, and that's because she doesn't feel like her needs are okay. And she really struggled with that, and I didn't have a lot of time. I mean, I was only there for almost 2 days. But I didn't have a lot of time to get into that because sometimes people just aren't ready. Sometimes my goal is to just bring it to the conscious level, to give them something to think about. And so that's kind of what I did. I put that out there. I gave them a holding emotional release prescription between the dad and the mother to work on. And I need to follow up with them to see if they've been doing it. But just to start mom releasing a little bit with dad and trusting that her voice matters. Can't you just see the 2-year-old? So she's got a sister older than her, a sister who's 3, I think, or maybe 4, and then she's 2, and then you got the baby brother who comes in. And can't you just see the 2-year-old who comes from a really strong foundation? But and I don't believe there was ever any abuse or any neglect. But just from that strong foundation, really feeling like, I need to be a good girl because mama's got the new baby brother, and I need to be a good girl, and I need to not cry and not have as many needs as I've had before baby brother came along. So I'm just going to kind of suck it up. And that is exactly what happens. And guess what? That's a traumatic event. That is an event that affects the psyche for the lifespan. That is an event that gets stored in the energy of the body and in the energy of the brain and affects an individual throughout the lifespan. And I think it's important as parents that we look at those kinds of relationships, that we look at those kinds of experiences, because when we don't and they show up, we don't understand them. We don't get it. And so that's why I say any stressful event, and when you're 2 years old and your mom has a baby brother, that's stressful. Any stressful event which is prolonged, and obviously that's prolonged, and it is overwhelming to have a new baby who's now crying all the time, and now your cries don't always get met with the same attention and the same nurture and the same needs. And I won't say it's so much unpredictable. But how could a 2-year-old predict what was going to happen with the baby brother coming along? He couldn't. See, that creates a developmental disruption. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. We're not going to get into the developmental stages, I don't think, as much as I'd like to. But I'm going to try to make that very simple for you. And no, we're not going to talk about that in just a moment. We're going to talk about that right now. Let me show you what happens. Let me create my little pen. My little pen over here. So, see if I can back that thing up for just a minute. Give me a little more room. All right. when we are, when we're a little baby, oh my gosh, that's a terrible little baby, isn't it? All right, this is a developmental stage. All right, and then we come up here to when we are, let's see. How do I make this a little crawling baby? So now we're a little crawling baby. And then we'll go up here, please forgive this artwork. And then we go up here, and now we're a little stumbling, bumbling, walking baby, or attempting to walk. And now we go up here, and we are now, look at this high leg. See, this means I am in motion. I am running. So we have baby. We have infant. I don't know. Is it infant or baby? Is it baby and then infant? Then we have toddler. And then we have child. Of course, they're all child. I'm just making that crap up, to be honest with you. But anyway, those are developmental stages, and these are all age-correlated stages. And I always recommend William Sears. His stages on development, I think, is beautiful, and he's has a very loving, nurturing spirit. But here's the thing. When you get up here to toddler, and all of a sudden, you're here, mom has had a baby here, and this becomes a prolonged, overwhelming, and unpredictable experience, guess what happens? A developmental barrier gets created. And when that developmental barrier gets created, you quite literally become developmentally delayed and developmentally stuck at that level. So then what happens is you get older, all right, you naturally progress through that, but this developmental barrier stays here. So that as you continue to get older, even now as you're a grown person, now you're a mom, and you're 45 years old. When you become stressed, because see, all of these experiences from this point forward are stored in your brainstem. So you carry these experiences with you. It's all stored in your brainstem from this point forward. So when you get stressed, you become stressed. Now you're a mom, you're 45 years old. One of the things that's likely to happen is you will regress back to your developmental stage. Bruce Perry says, in times of stress, we revert to our developmental zone of comfort. Let me tell you what that means. In other words, when you stress, you regress. And this is exactly what was happening to mom. In mom's stress, in those moment-to-moment experiences. See, she doesn't stay there. She does stay there somewhat. I have to say she is kind of stuck there. But not in a real angry way, but in an overwhelmed way. See, a lot of times the 2-year-old state is very reflective with a lot of aggression, a lot of inability to focus, a lot of impulsivity. Well, see, that's usually associated with boys, not always with girls. With girls, it has a tendency to show up as being a little bit more withdrawn, a little bit more shut down, a little bit more quiet, a little bit more reserved, okay, which is an uncertainty that my voice really matters. So then what happens is when mom gets stressed, she regresses to her developmental zone of comfort. And then from that place, she acts out. When you stress, you regress. See, a stressed out child, an acting out child, just like an acting out adult, is a stressed out child. So an acting out child is a stressed out child. An acting out adult is a stressed out adult. Now, we might not look at mom's behavior as acting out, but unconsciously it is. This is very important that you grasp this and that you pay attention to where your children are at in their behavior, because you might be working with a family or have a child who's 18, but developmentally that child is not 18. That child could be an infant. I mean, this could go all the way back to the baby in the infant stage, the baby in the infant stage. And so adults do this too. There's some research in one of Alan Shore's volumes on affect regulation that says in times of stress, some adults will revert to the state of infancy. And how many times have you seen, or have you heard in our society, act your age, not your shoe size, right? Or why don't you grow up and stop acting like a child, right? Those are all messages which actually, that's not metaphorical. Those are biological realities. Okay, when an adult is regressed to the stage of an infant, that is a biological reality. In fact, I have a wonderful slide here that was not, I don't think I included it today, but I'm going to find it because it is important. All right, let's see where we are. Let's see. Nope. Ah, here it is. Right here. We're going to shoot this on up, and we're going to put this in our presentation today, because this is important. Come on up a little bit more. Yes. So now let me erase these drawings. All right. And let me help you understand a little bit about the obsessive brain of Brian Post. I have to fix this to fit into the format of the rest of the presentation, or else it's not going to flow the way I would like it to. So I am willing to interrupt my presentation in order to get this perfectly formatted to match the rest of the presentation. So just give you a little insight. Not that it makes you any difference whatsoever. I want you to have a little insight into my madness. Is let there be no mistake about it. There is some madness going on in this brain. All right, now we're back. Tronick and Weinberg made this very important observation. This is perfect. This is perfect. When infants are not in homeostatic balance or are emotionally dysregulated, which means they are distressed, they are at the mercy of these states. Until these states are brought under control, infants must devote all their regulatory resources to reorganizing them. While infants are doing that, they can do nothing else. Therefore, as it relates to, and this is what Brian Post added, therefore, as it relates to children, during times of stress, the regressive state becomes the sole state of contention and behavioral demonstration. When we are stressed out, we act out. And when we are stressed out, the only thing we can do in that moment is contend with that state. When we are in that state level of memory, remember, I haven't talked a lot about the memory levels yet, but I'm about to jump into that. When we are in that state level of memory, and that's that lowest level, when we're in that state of distress, that is the only state that we can contend with. And to try to get a child, or to try to get an adult even to be at some other level some other level of operation in that moment is irrational. So to get a child to try to think in the midst of their dysregulation, in the midst of their acting out, is actually irrational. They can't. All they can do is focus on that state that they are in. And that is, all they can do is orient all of their sensory pathways towards creating regulation for that particular state. I remember once interviewing Marty Glenn, and Marty was the founder of Santa Barbara Graduate Institute. I was on the faculty there for a number of years. And I was interviewing Marty about adult attachment, and Marty was talking, and I said, well, Marty, is this really that much different than with children? She said, Brian, it is exactly the same, because most of us are regressing in those moments. And I think that is so profound. So if you can wrap your brain around that, if you can wrap your brain around the concept that when a child is stressed out and acting out, that actually creating regulation for that child in that moment is more important than anything else. When I also call that maintaining relationship, which I also call reflecting on your own internal state of stress so you can calm your own stress, so you can create an oxytocin-rich environment, an oxytocin opportunity. When you can create an oxytocin opportunity in the midst of a child's stress, you can help them turn on their oxytocin. When you help them turn on their oxytocin, then what you're doing is you're equipping them to be able to regulate that state of dysregulation. That's powerful. That is powerful. You're going to want to rewind this recording. When you get this recording, you're going to want to rewind that, and you're going to want to play that again 10 times. 10 times. If we think about when a child is in a state of dysregulation, meaning they are acting out, if we can understand that in that state, the only thing they can do is to send all of their pathways towards reorganizing that state, gaining regulation. If we can hold that within our consciousness, which means that will prevent us from becoming so completely overwhelmed and so completely stressed out as parents. And then we can focus on our own internal state of stress. We can take a deep breath. We can realize we're not going to die. We can realize that we really do have control in this situation. See, most people who seek to have control are people who don't feel like they are in control. See, the only time we seek to be in control is when we're stressed out and scared. Other times we seek to influence. So when you're not completely stressed out and overwhelmed, you don't need to control a situation because you already know you have control in the situation. And that is your ability to influence. So when you can calm yourself down and you are reducing your stress, you're reducing your stress vibration, you're turning on your oxytocin vibration, which means you're creating an oxytocin opportunity in the midst of your child's acting out, whether that's a deep breath, whether that is changing your tone of voice, whether that's changing your body language, whether that's changing some sensory stimulation in the environment, all of these things, or any one of them, is creating an oxytocin opportunity, which is then releasing oxytocin in your child's brain. Remember, because of the trauma that your child has experienced, because of the neglect, because of the pervasive abuse, because of the deprivation, because of the frequent moves they've been through, and on and on and on. Their oxytocin does not work at the same level that it needs to be in order to combat their dysregulation, and that's why they're so prone to being dysregulated. So they don't have they're not rich in oxytocin. So you turn that oxytocin on. When you turn that oxytocin on in their brain, you are equipping them with the greatest opportunity to restore those states of dysregulation. You're giving them the greatest opportunity to reorganize those states of dysregulation. And that is giving them the greatest opportunity to transition out of that regress state up to a level that you can really communicate with them. That's good stuff. You can take that to the bank right there. All right, let me make sure. Where are we at here? All right, so moving on. Important point. One person's perception of pain is different from another person's perception of pain. Byron Katie says pain is pain, and here's what you need to understand about this. in relation to trauma, what someone else has experienced cannot be compared to what you've experienced. I can't tell you how many times I have adults say all the time, yes, I experienced a traumatic event, but it wasn't anything near what she experienced. That's not true. It's all based on your perception. It's based on your interpretation. It's based on how your brain processes it. Someone could stub their toe, and that could be a traumatic event that could affect them no different than someone being physically abused. It all depends on the perception. And so we can't say one kind of trauma is more or less or greater or lesser than some other form of trauma. It's all based on perception. So that's very important. That's also very important when it comes to your child and what your child perceives to be a threat versus what you perceive to be a threat. Because how often do we say there was nothing stressful? Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've had parents say there was nothing for them to be stressed out about. And the parents talking about in the moment. We're not even considering what the whole school day, what the day has been like from beginning to end. I call it the A to Z principle. The A to Z principle. Since I notice I have a blank slide here. So since I do, to me, that's like a canvas just waiting to be painted on. So since I have this canvas, let's talk about the A to Z principle. This is going to be in the quiz, okay? So make a note of this. In order to get to Z, so if I put A here, then I'm going to come out here and I'm going to put Z. In order to get to Z, what do we have to do? We have to start with A, right? We have to say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. All right. So before we can get to Z, and this is the way I like to look at this, Z represents an outcome. Z also represents behavior. Okay? In our society, we have a tendency to look at Z and focus all of our attention around X and Y. So when a parent says there was nothing for him to be stressed out about, that's because all they're doing is looking at the outcome. All they're doing is looking at the behavior. They're not, and then as far back as they'll allow themselves to go is X and Y. What occurred at X or what occurred at Y? And if nothing occurred from the time he entered the house and went up to his bedroom, if nothing occurred during X, and there was nothing stressful in his bedroom, no one was even in there, no one was bothering him, no one even said anything, so why did he go into his room and destroy property? See how that works? That's how our brains get limitedly focused. And I believe that's because of the amygdala, because the amygdala, remember, the amygdala only senses threat. The amygdala only looks for a threat. So the amygdala is very limited in its perspective because it's just not a higher functioning part of your brain. I mean, if you think about the stages of memory, which we're going to get into, your amygdala, your brainstem, that's your limbic system. I mean, that's pure survival. But here's what I want to work with you to do. Here's what I want to help you to understand. That behaviors and outcomes, they're not dictated by X and Y. They're not even dictated by W or V. In order to get to Z, you have to come all the way back and start at A. And when you come all the way back and start at A, then what you're looking at is a process. See, this is where relationship is at. And here's what you have to understand. The process, quiz question, the process dictates what? The outcome. The process dictates the outcome. So if you want to change the outcome, then you have to come back here and you have to re-examine the process. So instead of coming back here to X and Y and saying, you know, he walked in the door, he went up to his room, he was up in his room for 5 minutes, and then he knocked out his window. You have to come back all the way back here, and now this is where you become empowered. So this is the A to Z principle is a completely empowering principle, but it takes responsibility. Because see, here we also have reactivity. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you knocked out your window. Why did you do that? No one did anything to you. See, this is all very reactive. But see, if you want to fully invoke the power of the A to Z principle, then you got to be willing to take responsibility. Now, if your child comes out here and busts out their window, and then you throw a consequence on them for busting out their window, see, that's how we get into reactivity. If you they bust out their window and you knock off some points, or you give them time out, or you isolate them in their room, or you spank, or you take them back to the doctor and get an increase in meds, or you restrain them, or you shame them. You see what I'm getting at? You see where I'm coming from? Do you smell what I'm laying down? That's reactivity. That's why I tell you, reactivity does not teach children anything except reactivity. Reactivity does not teach children responsibility, because we are not being responsible teachers when all we're doing is being reactive. Our children can't learn, because when your child is in the state of the outcome, when your child is in the state of the behavior, guess what? Your child is unconscious. Your child is acting out their stress. Your child is in a place of fear. Your child is in a place of survival. There's no clear thinking. There's no rational thought in this state. That's why you have to be willing to take responsibility, as difficult as it is, as painful as it can be, as frustrating as it can be. And you have to say, oh my gosh, he just knocked out his window. What the heck? And before you go rushing up there, you can rush up there if you need to rush up there. Rush up there and say, what are you doing? What is going on? That's the transition. What is going on? And then you have to start backing off of that, because that could be potentially too threatening. And then you have to come back here and you have to start examining. How was his night? How did he sleep? How was breakfast? How was going to school? How was being at school? How was lunch? How was recess? How was interaction with the friends? How was getting home from school? And everything that happens in between. All this dictates the outcome. The process dictates the outcome. If you want to change the outcome, you have to go back and change the process. See, the empowering component of this is that you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y. All of these are opportunities. All of these are opportunities to do something different to influence Z. So if I wanted to come back to W even, maybe I meet him at the door. Or if I do that, I meet him at the door. I meet him at the door at V, and then I get him some food. Or at U, I can call the school and find out how the day was. Or at T, maybe I can pick him up from school. Or at S, maybe I can go have lunch with him. Or at R, maybe I can make a phone call. Or at Q, and it just goes on and on and on. Okay, you just think about what are things that are going to create less stress? What are things that are going to help create more regulation for your child before you ever get to Z? And that's the A to Z principle. Spend some time, study that, think about it. It's life-changing. It's profound. So, Let's erase this jibba jabba. One person's perception of pain is different from another person's perception of pain. A traumatic event is an emotionally invalidated experience. What that means is when an event has occurred, so if you, let's say you're in a car accident. So you're in a car accident and everyone's safe. You get through it, and then you get back in your car and you're driving home and you call your husband and you say, I was just in a wreck. And he says, oh, honey, I can't talk about it right now. I'm right in the middle of something. So then you call your girlfriend. Oh, my gosh, can you believe I was just in this wreck? Oh, my gosh, that's terrible, but I can't talk to you right now. Can we talk later? You get home. Child's watching TV. Well, guess what? I was in a wreck today. Oh, yeah, whatever. Husband comes home. I was in a wreck today. Really? Was the car, did you tear up the car? I mean, you're okay, right? Yeah, but it really scared me. Honey, you're safe. Count your blessings. Life goes on. But you don't understand. I mean, it was really bad. Honey, I'm trying to watch a basketball game. And then guess what? You go to bed. And then guess what happens in the middle of the night? All of that stress that you're still carrying is settling in a very fragmented way in your brain, in your body. And so what you're doing is actually setting yourself up to carry an event potentially for a long time. So then what happens is the next day you get in a car, your car, and you're pulling out of the driveway, and you're driving along, you're driving down the street, and all of a sudden you start to perspire. You get hot. And all of a sudden your breathing gets short. And then you pull over because you think you're having a heart attack. But the reality is you're having a panic attack. And so you have this panic attack, you get through it, you say, oh my gosh. You drive back home, you think, oh my gosh, I don't know what just happened. So then you call and you set up an appointment with the psychiatrist. So you're afraid to get in the car because you don't want to have another panic attack, right? That's the thing. You don't want to have another panic attack. So you ask your husband to drive you because you haven't made the connection. Because see, this is where fragmented experiences occur. You haven't made the connection. Therefore, you're just looking at the next closest thing to make you feel safe. Your husband drives you. He thinks you're being a little ridiculous, but he drives you. He thinks you're being a little ridiculous, so he's not very supportive. He's not very compassionate. He's not very loving or understanding. He's just a little mad that he's going to miss, a night out with the guys because he's got to drive you to the psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist listens, and you may mention seeing the wreck, but I doubt it. Because he's just going to ask you how often has this happened before. You know, you've got about a 15 to 20 minute window of time. And then he's going to write you a prescription for an anti-anxiety medication. And then you're going to start taking that anti-anxiety medication, and then it's going to start affecting your sleep. And then not only is it going to start affecting your sleep, it's going to start affecting your sex drive. And then before you know it, now you've got marital relationship. Now you've got marital issues. You see how it happens? I mean, I'm giving you like a really simple way to look at it, but it happens just like that, time and time and time again, because we don't have an opportunity to have our experiences validated. Now, think about that, just to tie that back into adoption. Think about that in relationship to your child and the trauma and the abuse and the neglect, or just the fact that they were adopted. Maybe the only trauma was just the being adopted, being placed for adoption. When do you think this child has ever had an adult sit with them right in the midst of their negative behavior and say, oh my gosh, you are in a lot of pain. And I bet you've been in a lot of pain for a long time. In fact, I just had a colleague of mine was working with a family. Let me see if I can find the text, because I think this will help you all make some sense of what I'm trying to say. So he sent this at like 5:42 in the morning. This is yesterday morning. Everything went well. He's working with a family in Missouri. Everything went well yesterday. One question, Joshua, who was in an orphanage, he threatens to kill them and to kill the dog and to kill the 20-month-old baby. He said, I need a few words of wisdom to help them with that. And so obviously that's pretty scary for parents. I mean, this is, I think, a 9-year-old kid. That's very scary, especially when there's already been a lot of stress anyway. So my response was, he's experiencing his own birth imprints. They have to be able to say, they being the parents, they have to be able to say to him, there was a time you felt like you were going to die and we weren't there to protect you. We aren't trying to kill you. See, that's the paradox of the statement. See, we believe when a child says, I'm going to kill you, that they really mean they're going to kill us, or they want to kill us, but that's not the reality. The paradox of fear is that when a child is saying, I'm going to kill you, what they really mean is, I'm afraid you're going to kill me. That's what's reflected in the statement. And usually children say that who have some pretty deep, dark birth imprints around being aborted, or having a boyfriend or a spouse try to kill the fetus, kicking the mom or threatening the mom verbally while she's pregnant. That is very, very common. Or growing up growing in the womb in an environment of war and conflict. So I said, they have to be able to tell him, we aren't trying to kill you. We don't ever want to hurt you, or we don't want you to hurt us. We can keep you safe. Anytime he's making threats, that's when he's feeling the most threatened. Think about that. It reminds me, I had someone send me a question on Facebook the other day, which I don't typically even go on Facebook, but David, my business partner, and his wife Susan, also my partner, they go on Facebook and post on Facebook. And so if you put a question on Facebook, usually they'll forward it to me, but you all just need to email me directly. But the question was, tell me about why a child spits. And, why does a child want to spit on me? And I said, look, if a child wants to spit on you, it's typically because he feels threatened. And that's pretty much the only time he's going to spit. And that's not any different. That's not that much different from lots of animals in the animal kingdom. Spitting is a defensive mechanism for when we feel threatened. Because if we can spit, there are some animals, that's all they can do is spit. That is their primary defense. And so if we get put off by that, or if we get more threatening by that, then essentially what we're doing is only increasing the likelihood that the child's going to spit again. Which reminds me of another story that Bruce Perry tells about a child. The boy had been raised in a cage. He'd essentially been raised as a dog. And interestingly enough, he'd been raised that way because the parents, I guess it wasn't maybe it wasn't their child, or they kind of brought him in, or he'd gotten dropped off on the doorstep or something like that, or maybe they'd had the child and just had literally no idea of how to care for a child. So they had a dog kennel, and they figured if the way they were raising their dogs worked for their dogs, then it would work for this child. And so they put the child in a pen, in a cage, in a kennel with all the other dogs, and that's essentially how they interacted with him. So when this was finally found out, obviously, the child is taken into custody, and then he's sent to, obviously, a psychiatric hospital, because no one's going to know what to do with that. And they called in Dr. Perry to come in and assess the kid, and they said the problem is every time you get close to the kid's cage, well, he'll flick feces on you. And so they were all freaked out. They no one was wanting to interact with this kid because they were all afraid of the feces. And so he said, so I walked in. I see this kid who's been taken into custody. He said literally the kid is in a crib with a board wired down over the top of it. He said it is no different than the kennel he came from, except now these are professionals that are doing this. And so I walked over and sat down beside the crib, and obviously a kid flicks the feces on me. He said, but I didn't do anything. I just sat there, and over time I got a little closer and a little closer, and finally I was able to make contact with the child. He said, and needless to say, I went back to those professionals and threw a shit fit. Pun intended, I'm sure. But that is the point, is when we are looking at behaviors and we become focused on those behaviors, then we lose the connection to the trauma that's driving the behavior. The trauma creates a developmental barrier. When a child is acting out, that child is stressed out, and that stress is coming from some much deeper place. So you can't allow yourself to get too overwhelmed by the behavior, because as soon as you're overwhelmed by that behavior, then you are operating out of your amygdala. And you've got to be able to transcend all of that primal activity. Your body holds those memories, and it either holds them in a fragmented way or a concrete way, in a coherent way or in an incoherent way. This is significant when it comes to trauma. When you've experienced a traumatic event and you don't have an opportunity to express, process, and understand, that event gets stored in your brainstem, in your body, in an incoherent way, in a fragmented way. Therefore, any experience can trigger that event, and you won't know what it is. Any experience can stir that event up, and you won't know what it is. Any sensory pathway can stir that event up, and you won't know what it is. You know, temperature can change, what you smell, what you see, what you hear, movement, digestion, touch, anything can trigger that event, and then boom, it's all over. You are now operating out of that state of trauma. It is alive in you, and you don't know why. That's why the mother who has the car wreck, who can't process it, all of a sudden is in a full-blown panic attack. Now, you think I'm just giving you an example. I had a lady who came up to me after a lecture. She said, oh, my gosh, I finally figured this out. She said, my entire life. This is in a lecture. She said, I finally figured it out. She said, my entire life I have been terrified by birds. She said, sometimes I'll go out into my car and there'll be a bird. She said, I'll get in my car on the way to work and a bird will fly down on the hood of my car and I will freeze. And she said, I will beg and I will pray, please, bird, get off of my car. She said, I cannot move until that bird gets off of my car. And she said, finally, that bird will fly away and I'll be able to drive on to work. She said, I've been terrified by birds my entire life. I just now realized that when I was a child, I was about 5 years old, I watched my sister get attacked by a rooster in the backyard. The feathers were flying everywhere. I didn't get attacked. My sister got attacked. She said, I have been terrified by birds ever since. And you just helped me understand why. In that moment, she took what throughout her entire life had been a fragmented, incoherent event and connected it. She connected it. That will give her some conscious control from this point forward over her experience. Now, as I typically do, I always talk much longer than I should, and we don't get through everything that we should, but that's why we have 16 weeks, because we are going to continue working through this material. I want you to get it. I want you to really get it. I want you to understand it. I want you to feel it with me. I'm feeling it as I'm sharing it with you. And the reason I'm going through this process, the reason I'm not just, jumping right into parenting tools and techniques is because tools and techniques mean nothing. They mean nothing. The sooner you can stop even thinking about a tool, the sooner you can stop even thinking about a technique, the sooner you can stop even thinking about an approach, the better off you're going to be. Because I want you to operate from an understanding. And when you operate from an understanding, then you become the tool. You are the technique. Your regulation, your ability to create oxytocin, your ability to stay prefrontal in the midst of a stressful situation, your ability to emotionally connect, your ability to understand trauma in the midst of severe behavior, your ability to be able to stay present when you are wanting to react from past experiences. Boom! That's when you got it. When you get that, that's when you move to the next level. We're going to talk about the tools and techniques. We're going to talk about the things you can do, but that's all that stuff is not, it's not the important stuff. This is the important stuff. I spent years studying this stuff, years. I would be up all night sometimes studying this material and asking questions. I remember when I first asked the question to myself, I said, attachment is this great concept. I love the concept of attachment. I was a professional. I had finished my master's degree. I'd started getting some training with Martha Welch, who's a psychiatrist from Columbia. And I was learning all about attachment. It felt so good to me. And I was like, attachment is where it's at. But then one day I said, oh my gosh. Attachment is very important. But what leads to attachment? That question was not answered. Everyone was focusing on attachment therapy and attachment parenting and the tools and techniques. But no one was saying, these are the things that you do that make attachment possible. They were saying, do these things to get the child to attach. But they were not addressing what is actually going into the development of the attachment system. 3 years I asked that question. 3 years I asked that question. 3 years I studied looking for that. And one night, it was actually it was one night, I woke up and I said, and that the question popped into my head. The question popped into my head, what leads to attachment? What is attachment? You see, I'm doing that obsessive thing on you here. But I've got a point to this. What leads to attachment? And I went back to sleep, and I don't think it had really popped into my head in quite some time. And so I went back to bed, and I woke up, and I was driving. I was working in a group home in Vancouver, Canada. It was early in the morning. I still remember this. Driving my little car, and it was kind of raining. And that question popped into my head, what leads to attachment? And then the answer, like a light bulb, was stress. As long as we are stressed out, we cannot create attachment. As long as we are stressed out, we are in survival. As long as we are stressed out, we are in a state of dysregulation. As long as the circumstances around us, as long as the environment around us is stressful, it's unsafe, we cannot create attachment. Therefore, the ability to develop attachment is dependent on the state of regulation. Without regulation, a child cannot develop attachment, and a parent figure cannot bond. That is a paradigm principle. That is as much a paradigm principle as in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted and our short-term memory is suppressed. That is much a paradigm principle as in times of stress, as affect dysregulation is a fundamental mechanism involved in all psychiatric disorders. This is a paradigm principle. The ability to develop attachment is dependent on the state of regulation. Without regulation, a child cannot develop attachment and a parent figure cannot bond. This redefines everything. This redefines every parenting tool and technique you'll ever use. Because if what you're doing is ultimately creating more stress, if what you're doing is ultimately creating more dysregulation, you are not setting the framework, creating the environment for attachment to occur, because you're not creating a foundation for regulation, which means you're not creating an opportunity for oxytocin. This is where oxytocin comes in. See, it all connects. It all connects. It all connects. That's enough for today. We're going to end this session. I want to say God bless each and every one of you. Hold your heads up high. Look in the mirror. Say, I choose love. I am a beacon of love. God loves me, and everything's going to be all right because I choose love. Have a great weekend, everyone.